here we are, day number 2. Thank you for those who have stuck with us for a second day. You know, we're doing this for a whole month, right? Very quickly, this is who we are at Splice. Rishad and I are the thorn among the roses, well, the one rose out here. Shirley Chong is our festival producer. She's sitting right behind the screen, doesn't want to be revealed, but we'll find a way to turn on the camera later while she doesn't realize it. She's also the one who's in the chat box, replying to messages, putting links in there and all that. So thank you, Shirley, again, for the wonderful work that you do with us.
I want to jump in and quickly say that, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat box. Feel free to put in links, email addresses, Twitter handles, whatever it is you like, however it is you want people to get in touch with you. Mute yourselves if you're not speaking. We'll come to that later. I want to tell you quickly, those of you who don't know, very quickly, this is what we do. Alan and I co-founded this company called Splice. We started about 5 years ago. And we want to support media startups in Asia, and we want them to be bold and forward-looking and sustainable.
So why are we doing this? A lot of people have asked why we're so crazy as to try to put this together in a year of COVID. It comes down to the fact that we really care about the importance of getting the ecosystem right when it comes to media. Media startups are important to us, and we need a whole community of entrepreneurs, of academics, of journalists, of startup founders themselves to be a part of this, because the only way that we're going to solve the media problem is to bring everyone together on board. So Beta is where we celebrate the work that the ecosystem is doing. This is their platform for that.
We're really proud of, we've been building this program as I was telling some of you, we started out wanting to do this in person like we did last year in Chiang Mai in February. Then we said, nope, there's this COVID thing. Let's do it in September in person in Chiang Mai. That didn't happen. This is the third version of what we had planned to do. You would think we've got it right by now. We've got 40+ sessions lined up. We've got 46 speakers, one of whom is Hamish. 50% of those are female, and we're very proud of gender balance. It's a very big deal for us. We don't like males at all. We've got 5 stacks. We're dividing stacks up into kind of themed. You can go, Mondays are for business and strategy, Tuesdays are for product and audience, Tuesdays are for product, Wednesdays are for audience, Thursdays are for something else, operations and management, and Fridays are for media careers. And as you know, it's 1 month.
So everything that you need to know about Splice Beta is on the website. Go to splicebeta.com/program. You will see all of our speakers, the wonderful gender balance that we're supporting here. Also, just the diversity of media startups that are they're in this space right now.
We will be coming up later. I just want a quick shout out to the fact that we have 2 shows today, or 2 sessions today. Nikki Meek from Instagram will be talking about how to build a brand and community on Instagram. That's at 4 o'clock today, Singapore time.
And of course, none of this would be possible without the help of our sponsors, Facebook Journalism Project, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, both of which have been in our corner since day one, even when we initially talked about this crazy idea to do beta. They've stuck with us. Thank you so much. Google Illuminate, NBIF, AFP, Foyo, IMS, Click2View, who's providing a lot of the technical advice here. Although I need to say that none of the mistakes that I'm making here are a reflection of them. This is our mistakes, and we're learning as we go. Puma Podcast is helping us with all our audio recordings, which they will turn into a wonderful series of podcasts. We just launched one. Well, we launched the only one last week. It's called Spice Pink. Have a look at that on wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Quick ground rules. If you tweet this, that would be amazing. Splice Beta hashtag always welcome. Using headphones, microphones, good idea because we get better sound. Again, quiet room with good light. We like to see your faces. Please leave all your comments and questions and links and whatever you like in the chat box. In fact, put in questions for the speaker into the chat box. We'll represent your questions to Hamish. And this way, feel free to bring a drink. We've been calling this BYOB, bring your online beverage. Drink what you like. We're all friends here. This is nice and chill. We are going to be making this publicly available on YouTube and Facebook. If you'd rather not be visible, then, mute yourself, turn your camera off. A quick nod to the hackers of the world. Porn bombing is a thing. We were once porn bombed in a rather lame way ages ago. If it happens, we're going to bump the person and all move on like the adults that we are. Be kind, be generous. We're all figuring it out. We want to hear from all of you.
All right. Well, with all of that, having taken up so much of your time, let's go to our main act. Hamish McKenzie, thank you so much for saying yes to coming on to Splice Beta. We know you're really busy. It is 10:15 p.m. In San Francisco, where you are right now. Thank you for taking the time to come hang out with us. We want to talk to you about what Substack is doing to support independent journalists, giving them a platform and a way to monetize their work. So for those of us, and obviously in this group, we already have a lot of, we have a lot of people here who use Substack. For those who've never heard of Substack, what's the easiest way for you to tell someone about what you do?
The most common ways I explain it to people is that we make it simple for a writer to start a paid newsletter. It doesn't quite capture it because it's not only an email newsletter when you have a Substack, but it's also kind of a blog or a website. So every time you publish a post, you can publish it to your website and mail it out to your subscribers. You don't have to have paid subscriptions involved, but that's definitely an option. So if you want to try and support yourself through your writing, then building up a paid subscriber base is a good way to do it.
Can you take us through the journey you went through to get here? You are a journalist, or you were working as a professional journalist for a number of years before you started up. How did you make that jump to being part of a tech startup?
Yeah, it was not my intention. I loved being a journalist. I never wanted to leave it. Well, I had a varied career as a journalist. I was an editor of the student magazine at my university in New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi, and did a master's degree in journalism. I went to Hong Kong and lived in Hong Kong for 4 years. I see one of my colleagues and good friends, Mike Savage, is on this call. So hi, Mike. And worked various magazines and did freelance for various newspapers, including the SCMP in Hong Kong, and moved to the US as a freelancer. Ended up working for a tech news site called Pando Daily. From there, I got hired by Elon Musk to go work for Tesla as the lead writer, which was a bit of a strange departure in my career. Did that for just over a year, had a really interesting and fun journey, and decided I'd be happier being a journalist again outside of the company. And the way I did that was to write a book about electric cars, which is called Insane Mode. Came out a couple of years ago, 2017, I think. While I was writing that book, I worked for part-time for a company that was run by a nice group of Canadians. It's called Kik. It was a messaging app that was huge in its day, but ultimately kind of lost to WhatsApp and Instagram and some others that came up and became more popular. But made good friends with people at Kik. And one of those friends was Chris Best, who was one of the co-founders there and was the chief technology officer there. And another friend was Jiraj Sethi, who was the he was the top developer at Kik. And it was with those two who I eventually ended up founding Substack with. And again, I did not want to become a startup guy, really. I was not looking to become a founder. I knew that because I wrote about these people back at Panda Daily. I knew that this was like a difficult thing to do, like an emotionally difficult thing and an energy-wise difficult thing to do. And I was about to have a kid at the time, so I thought that was going to be a big distraction from being a decent father. But because it was this particular idea, because it was what is now known as Substack, I felt like I had to do it, and my wife convinced me I had to do it, because I thought if we could make this work, and it works beyond just one or two people, then the effects could be quite profound. And I believed it could work. So I thought it's worth giving it a shot.
And you're one of several co-founders, is that right? And what's your role in the company?
One of three.
One of three, yeah.
Yeah, there's three of us. So the other two guys are the smart ones and the technical ones. So Chris is the CEO and the head of product. So he's responsible for everything you've seen about how Substack works as a product. And Jiraj is head of engineering, so builds everything, all the features. And up until a year ago, it was just the three of us. We're 15 people now. So each of us had to cover a lot of ground. And my job has always been to know writers and talk to writers, and not only help attract them to Substack, but help them be successful on Substack and help get the sort of the word out about, help spread the Substack religion, kind of.
So I'm a product guy myself, and neither of us are the brain. Shirley's the brains, but I'm curious always about why. Did all three of you get together and say we've got to do something, or did with our Kick experience, which is real-time chat and file sharing, or was it we've got to build paid email? Was that the objective?
Yeah, in the very earliest days, it was just me and Chris. And Chris had come to visit me in San Francisco. He was living in Canada at the time. He's Canadian. And after one of these visits, he was talking to me. He had just stepped away from Kick and he was taking a bunch of time off. And he said one of the things he wanted to do was get back into writing more. And so he sent me this essay for my feedback. And in the essay, he was kind of decrying what had become of our sort of media information ecosystem because of the failure of the business models that have supported media for the last couple of 100 years. And
absolutely,
chief among the complaints that he had in this essay was that social media was kind of pushing us to live in this attention economy where the things that you had to do to get the rewards, the things you had to do to get ahead, were not necessarily the things that are conducive to a good sort of truth-telling and storytelling environment where we all are reasonable people who make good decisions about our reading habits and good decisions about our publishing habits. The things that help you get ahead in this social media dominated environment, things that get attention. And so on one hand, you can do things that are delightful and promote joy. But on the other hand, and what's easier and what's kind of more common are things that create division and sow outrage and get you a lot of attention for bad reasons.
But the company's DNA at this point was around Kick, around providing a messaging service for people. How much of a leap was that to move from that to thinking about paid newsletters as a way to help independent writers and journalists as well?
Yeah, well, for Chris, he had such firsthand knowledge about what it's like to build a really popular social app and how incentives come into play. So it doesn't matter how you hope people are going to use your product. The rules you set for that product will determine behavior that follows. And so that's why in this essay that he was writing that I was talking about before, he was kind of bemoaning the problems of the incentives that the attention economy create. That was leading to all these negative behaviors in society, as well as losing journalists' jobs and newspapers shutting down and all that sort of stuff. And his thought was, well, if you're going to build something that's better than that, you have to create a new rule structure, create different incentives. And so, yeah, he'd shared this email, this blog post with me and asked for my feedback. And I was like, yeah, all the people in media, everyone who works in media knows that these are the problems. Like these are common complaints, but what no one knows is how to do something productive about it. So like include a couple of paragraphs at least proposing a positive alternative. And to his credit, he never finished the essay because it started these conversations, what would be a better incentive structure to design. And we came to the conclusion that online advertising was kind of at the center of everything, because these machines get built around online advertising that are optimized for engagement. And that's a game that Google and Facebook have won. And it's very difficult for any media entity to compete against that. And so if you're going to create a new set of rules where Facebook and Google couldn't have such a hold on the economy, then it probably should be based on payments, and specifically on subscriptions, which can recur and provide stability for writers without them needing to have a giant audience and without them having to play a clickbait game.
Who else was around? I mean, did you guys know of anybody else who was actually doing the same thing? Was there? I've seen a bunch of things around email that were somewhat lame. If you want to bump this up to in my inbox, then you have to buy a coupon token but I've never heard of a, am I missing something? I don't think we've heard of a paid.
Yeah, or at least not at a platform level. There was always,
right.
Someone was like, hey, pay me $5 and tell me how much you love me.
Right.
I mean,
one thing that was
Ben Thompson was doing stuff, early on, pre-Substack. So
yeah, Ben Thompson was a big inspiration for Substack, and particularly the Substack model. At the start of it, we were describing Substack as kind of like stratechery as a service. So Ben Thompson's newsletter, where he's listed all, if you go to this privacy policy, he lists all the tools he uses to run stratechery, and there was about 19 of them, and he pays for most of them. And so what the problem is that you have to be, not only do you have to be a good writer, but you also have to have the business sense to sort of design an economic model around the work to support it. And then you have to have the tech savvy to be able to cobble together these disparate tools that kind of work for this task, but not perfectly. And so Ben Thompson, as an example, uses Memberful to manage the payments, and then WordPress and MailChimp. And even and a bunch of other things, but even getting WordPress and MailChimp to work together is a pain in the ass. So he has to use another tool called Yellowbrim to make a post that he's composed in WordPress publish nicely in MailChimp. And MailChimp costs lots of money as well for when you're sending out lots of emails, and it's designed for email marketers, not for writers. And so our thing was, well, what if we just took all that stuff off the table so that all you had to do was be the good writer? Like, you didn't have to be a tech expert. You didn't have to be a business expert. And we thought that by dramatically lowering that barrier to entry and making this a much more accessible model for people who just had interesting things to say and an interesting viewpoint, then something interesting might happen. And we convinced Bill Bishop, who writes about China, he was based in Beijing for a decade, who I knew from my Hong Kong days, to come and be the first guinea pig for Substack. And he was planning to go make his newsletter paid at the time anyway, but he was kind of intimidated by trying to make all these disparate tools work together. So he said, yeah. And then he flipped the switch with Substack on his first day in October 2017, and was immediately, after 5 years of doing a newsletter with no revenue, he was immediately making six figures on that first day, US dollars. And so with
six figures.
Yeah. So yeah, this can work. We should
business. So we've got a great question here from Nitin. Nitin started a Asia-focused newsletter about over a year ago. Yeah, and he's on Substack as well. He's asking, beyond the high-profile full-time successes like cynicism, what other types of growth are you seeing in terms of journalists who are moving on to paid newsletters? Do you have a long tail effect, I would imagine, across the region?
Yeah, well, around the world. I think we're pretty nascent in Asia in particular. Our stronghold is definitely in the US. It's just as an effect of where our sort of company is based and the people we talk to every day. but there's definitely it looks a lot like other platforms, and where there's the whales at the top who make most of the money, and then there is a sort of good long tail and a growing middle class. But one thing that's been encouraging to see is that as the ecosystem matures a bit, and as more people get used to the idea that there is a thing such as Substack and a model like this, and readers get accustomed to that and writers get accustomed to that, we do see more people who are not only trying it out and building their lists just because it's a good thing to own your audience, but making good side money, and then moving that from making good side money to making like pretty interesting, pretty close to full-time money, and then being able to convert to a point where they can quit their day job and go full-time with Substack. So I don't actually have the like percentage breakdown on the tip of my tongue, but it doesn't look too much different to other creative platforms.
I remember the recent, what was it, the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, I forget, had that big feature article on you guys. And, you know, it was interesting to see that, see the transformation of people who were traditionally freelance journalists, who actually, they were calling them media organizations in their own right. You are a media company unto yourself. And, you know, this is interesting. We have a question from CBF team, otherwise known as Nikki Torres, who runs Chief Best Friends, which is a podcast. Where you're never going to live this down, Nikki. But Nikki's saying that, you know, what do you think has been the biggest challenge for writers to get paid for their writing? I feel like we may be perpetuating the notion of if you build it, they will come, which is a kind of crap business model from the days of yore. Or in our case, if you write it, the readers will come. So I think if I may, Nikki, you know, add on to your question is, what's a good use case for me to actually do a paid newsletter?
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I think you want to own a beat. So niche is an advantage in this world. You don't want to try and go for the broadest possible audience. Like the better, the more of a domain expert you are, the more advantage you have in this model. So if it's, you know, and you can be like, not just covering Singapore soccer, for example, it could be like the economics of Singapore soccer, or I don't know if there's a league in Singapore or whatever, but you get it, like where there's an intersection or something. If you can own that intersection, then you're not looking for the world's largest audience. You're looking for an audience that is hungry for good coverage of an area that is starved of good coverage. I think there are some people who are big names who can pull it off and write about whatever they want because they have kind of like a cult of personality. But there's not many people in the world. The rest of the world is going to succeed with this are people who own a beat, focus on that, stay consistent, and put in consistent hard work and energy into building this like a media business, because it is a media business. And no one is guaranteed success just because a new platform exists. It reminds me a lot of the early days of blogging, where anyone could have a blog. You know, in the early 2000s, in blogging, it was really humming along nicely. Anyone could have a blog, and there were some people who were more successful than others, and some people had overnight success, and others had overnight success after 5 years of grind. There are some accelerant effects these days because of the prevalence of social media and the speed at which good ideas and good work can travel, and hopefully because of the way we've built the platform, and we'll continue to build out the platform with features that will drive things like discovery. But otherwise, you're building a media business, and it's not supposed to be easy.
Yep. Hey, Lila Sharp has a really great question. Can I get you to unmute yourself, Lila, and jump in with that question?
Sure. I'm curious for your thoughts about the subscription model expanding into other spaces, specifically like in audio and podcasting, where there's tons of content, but it's, you know, the standard is it's free. I can go to Spotify or iTunes and listen to as many podcasts without paying.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the future of paid subscription podcasts, and there are a few tools out there that are dipping the toe in these waters, and some podcasters who are doing it. Substack has a podcasting feature in it. Actually, we don't make a big deal about it because we mostly focused on writers, and so our podcasting feature is mainly for writers who want a podcast rather than podcasters who want a newsletter. And it's free to host and distribute through Substack, and you decide on a episode by episode basis, just as you do with your text posts, which one's free for everyone and which one's only for my paid subscribers. I definitely think there's a lot of potential in the model for podcasting. I don't think there's much difference between that and text, for example. It's still a relationship with this person who you trust or love. And in some ways, it may be a stronger, deeper relationship because the voice is so intimate. It's like having this person whispering in your ear. I definitely think it's still a huge advantage to have that subscription product, whether it's audio or text, based around this mailing list that you own. The mailing list is the key thing. The mailing list is more important than the idea of a newsletter to Substack, because the mailing list is your audience. That's where you have a direct relationship with the people who care most about your work. And you can take it with you anyway. Like no one owns it. Substack doesn't own it. An employer doesn't own it. A platform can't like change the algorithm rules and screw your whole business and livelihood. So that is the key underpinning. And I think it can work for audio. I think it can work for text. I think it can work for video. I think it can work for live streaming. I think it can work for community.
We definitely agree with that at Splice. We use MailChimp. We hold on to our audiences or lists, as they used to call them, with our lives, and we take backups and we download and we, lose the files. But it really is the DNA of why we do what we do. In fact, I could say pretty much everybody here is probably here because they read a newsletter at some point or the other.
Yeah.
Alan writes one. I like one. I want to ask you a question, Hamish, about that comes from Raven at Univox. She says, I can see the potential of Substack going beyond writers and journalists, talking about audiences. Are there plans to expand to other sectors in the future?
It's definitely interesting to us. We have illustrators, for example, using Substack, and we do have podcasters and people distributing video through Substack. For now, for sure, we are definitely laser focused on writers. We think that's a fantastic group of people to serve, and a really important group of people to serve, and underserved, in my opinion, on the internet. There are lots of services that will help you sell tea cozies, and not many that will help you sell your writing. So yeah, I think there's lots more important work to be done focusing on writers before we get too far out.
Junie asks a related question from One Ifra, which is a newspaper world association of newspapers. Do you have many companies using Substack to monetize their content? Junie's saying, I can also imagine another use case. Do clubs or associations use it to manage memberships? Do you have auto renewal features?
Yeah, the subscriptions auto renew. We don't have many clubs. Not that I can think of clubs and associations. That could be interesting. When you ask about companies who may be using Substack to monetize, what we have are media companies. And it's not so much legacy companies that have existed and decided all of a sudden they want to have a paid newsletter. I think that doesn't really work as well, because there are a whole lot of other business assumptions that they've built their whole companies on that are bedded in and give them other priorities. But we have new media companies emerging who are building natively on Substack with the Substack rules in mind from day one, or not even the Substack rules, like the subscription email/web rules in mind. And they're doing very well. Like the number one publisher on Substack at the moment is a media company called The Dispatch, which is a politics site started by a former newspaper and magazine journalist in the US. And we're going to see a lot more of that type of thing, I'm sure.
Hey, can I ask you a little bit about your legal fund, which I found to be really interesting? I love the fact that you're doing it. I love the fact that even though you're making this platform available to everyone, You basically created a fund to support and defend journalists, as far as legal support goes. What was the thinking behind that, and how does it work?
Yeah, well, one of the things that many independent writers, and especially journalists, need to be able to do their jobs well, properly, is the confidence to be able to stand up to legal intimidation or intimidation through legal threats. And so we don't want to wait around and wait for that sort of ecosystem to emerge around Substack. We wanted to give it a head start. And so what we did is set up a program where writers can apply to be part of the program. And if they have paid subscriptions on and they reach a minimum bar of credibility, they can then apply on a story-by-story or case-by-case basis to get their stories reviewed by lawyers that Substack pays, but lawyers that don't work for Substack but are on retainer, and to get responses to cease and desist letters and other attempts to intimidate. And we kind of see this as helpful to the Substack business because it's helpful to writers. And so there are a lot of, and we've seen it happen. We've had a couple of writers on Substack who have come to us saying, I've got a touchy story that may cause legal issues or may make me a target of defamation suits. Or in another case, someone who was writing a politics story about a congressperson or someone running for Congress in their state, and that congressperson got upset about the story and sent a really angry, threatening cease and desist letter sent by a high-powered lawyer who used to work for the George W. Bush administration. And we looked at that and we thought, yeah, we think that sort of stuff deserves defending because it's important work. And in these cases, in this particular case, the accusations in the lawyer's opinion were spurious. And we don't want any people who just have more money and more cultural power to think that they can come and intimidate journalists, independent writers out of doing their work. So we wanted to send a message that if you're going to mess with these independent writers, you're also going to have to mess with Substack. And as our resources grow, that could become painful for you.
That's a huge amount of support that you're throwing there. Is this only in the US, or are you looking at other regions as well? Because as you know, in Asia, we do have a lot of legal challenges and definitely a lot more, need on that front as well.
Yeah. I've done quite a bit of work with Asia Sentinel. So my friends run their publication and they know all about those legal challenges. We're starting in the US. We have to stay focused and keep it in our home region at the moment. For the time being, it's still kind of a pilot stage, but we do want to expand it. And that's about all I can say about it for now.
Speaking of expansion and future plans, again, as a product person, I'm kind of excited to see what you're building out. There was talk of better profile pages, home pages, MailChimp. We're very MailChimp centric. Sometimes sometimes we love it and sometimes we can't stand it. They did landing pages, which were kind of cool. They started doing, I said, wow, I wish we could just do an entire website because this is a CRM. I wish and then we tried the website and I never want to do that again. It was an unpleasant experience. But I'd love to see, if I was an entrepreneurial writer, a media entrepreneur, I'd love to be able to not just do my paid newsletter there, but also my website, also a customer, manager, also maybe landing pages, also maybe bookkeeping. I don't know. Where are we going with the future plans, or what are you allowed to tell us?
It's not that I'm not allowed to say things. It's just that some of the stuff is a little bit ahead of where we are at the moment. Just we remain a small team, and we remain. I think it's wise to stay focused in these early tender days of the company. But lots of that stuff is interesting to us and exciting to us. So there are some things coming pretty soon that will start to demonstrate the kind of benefits of being part of the Substack as a network, not just Substack as a publishing tool with various publications existing as islands on their own sprinkled around the world, but things that help demonstrate that there can be communication and cooperation between those islands. So yeah, I think there's some pretty cool stuff coming up in the short term, and some of the other stuff you're talking about there, like building out more of a full-featured website with customized landing pages and stuff like that. There might just be a little bit longer in the future.
Thanks for that, Hamish. I want Florence, if you could hear me. You had this question in here about users and subscribers. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Go for it.
Hey everyone, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, because I subscribe to Dari Mulut ke Mulut, and I also just subscribed to Nisan Kulka's subscription. And I think this is the future to helping independent journalists like themselves. And I think there is great potential. But I want to know Substack's what is the potential of subscription-based newsletters as such here in Asia? And because this may not be new, but in Asia, how do you push not just getting onto the subscription? How do you push the market to believe that this is the future of media and news?
Well,
and also, sorry, and my second question is, do you also help journalists to get their subscription out there in terms of distribution, promoting, and reaching out to a bigger audience? Thank you. Thanks.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Florence.
Yeah, thanks for your questions. Asia, I don't think there's anything inherent about Asia that would make Substack not work where it works in other places like the US. And depending on what exactly you mean when you say in Asia, like in China, like WeChat has variations, of writers being supported directly by their readers, and it works outstandingly well. In Japan, there's a thing called Note, which is a little bit like a hybrid of Medium and Substack, and that works really well. I think the main thing is, are you a writer writing important things about a particular topic where there are some group of readers who want that stuff, and having that direct channel of communication with them through email has proven to be effective. And we've seen around the world that some section of that audience in a subject area will be happy to pay, not just grudgingly pay, will be happy to pay for the work that they find meaningful from a writer who they trust. So I'm bullish on the prospects for Asia. I don't think there's a reason it would fail in Asia where it hasn't in the US. On the promotion front, we don't actually do much promotion of writers, and it's a game that we're a little bit wary of getting into. For instance, we do not intend to do algorithmic recommendation. We don't want Substack to be the recommender. We'd rather the discovery come through more like the old days of blogging, through peer-to-peer referrals, where writers recommend and talk about other writers they like, and readers share which writers they like. And I think that can be more powerful and holds true to that idea that this is an ecosystem based on trust, rather than Substack trying to own the audience and then decide who wins and who loses, and writers get to refer people to each other. So there's not much of that in Substack at the moment, but you can expect to see some features along those lines in the not too distant future.
And speaking of features, Nikki Torres has a question about more features coming up. Nikki, why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question? And we'll make this the last question. We're all running out of time here.
This was your question about integrations.
Yeah, I noticed for Substack, there's not a lot of way to integrate Substack in terms of, let's say, my other tech stacks. So for example, if I'm thinking of Substack as one of the options in terms of my ecosystem of content or a business, there's no way for me to integrate Substack. Is this something that Substack has kind of like discussed internally as you're not going to support, or is there kind of like a roadmap in the future to be able to integrate with, even for example, like right now, maybe Zapier? So was wondering, like, what's the thinking behind that? Is there a potential to start having integrations in the future?
Yeah, the limit at the moment is that you can embed a sign-up form on your website. I think we're philosophically opposed to it. It's a little bit of a like wait and see how things play out at the moment. And in the present time, we're very stain focused and keeping our eyes on the prize with web and email and a mailing list and payment system tightly integrated in a Substack system. What I do think is really important is that Substack is not like a tack on to some other work you're doing elsewhere. Like if that's what you're thinking, then Patreon's a better thing to do. Like Patreon's the tool you plug in to support the work done on some other tech stack. Substack's great advantage, I think, is that it is this integrated system where the publishing happens in the same place as the subscriber management and the payments, so that you get the maximum efficiency of converting a casual reader into a sign up and then converting that sign up into a paying subscriber. And this is the stuff my smarter colleagues who do the engineering and design work spend all their time thinking about. They figure out the perfect place to put the button, the perfect way to design a landing page, and the perfect way to make something shareable and look good and load fast online. And so having all those small wins at every juncture where there might otherwise be some drop off, having all those things add up actually makes a huge difference overall. And so we commonly see people who try to publish on their website, but then use Substack as like a newsletter complement to that, or use Substack as kind of like a de facto paywall for something published elsewhere. That just doesn't work as well. And there are better solutions for that kind of thing, frankly. So integrations, it's not like we're totally religiously opposed to it, but we're definitely religiously invested in the idea of a nice, tightly integrated system.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I think probably one of the reasons why I've decided to go into Substack is because I feel like all of those constraints allows for a lot more creativity. So I could just really focus on what I'm writing and what I'm creating, and I don't have to worry about all these other things, which I think for a lot of writers is such a godsend.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. That is one of our kind of taglines, is we say to people on calls a lot, is like, we'll take care of everything except the hard part, which is the writing itself.
Ain't that true?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. We know that all of you have other things you want to get to. We've got to go set up our next session, which happens 2 hours from now. This is Nikki Meek from Instagram. So for those of you who still have your afternoons free, or whatever time zone you're in, please come back and join us then. Thank you so much, Hamish, for your time. We also want to do a quick shout out to our sponsors once again. Thank you, Facebook Journalism Project. Thank you, Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, for your support in making all of this happen. We will see all of you again. Thank you, Hamish. Really appreciate this.
Thanks very much for having me.
Hope you get to bed soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Hamish.
Good night, Hamish.